Like any TV show worth its salt, Doctor Who has had plenty of great plot twists over the years. River Song revealed as the missing child of Amy and Rory, John Hurt turning around in the name of the Doctor, brilliant stuff. But inevitably, there are also a fair few twists and turns that have been abandoned over the years. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie with Who Culture, here with 10 insane Doctor Who plot twists that nearly happened. Number 10, a rap on Clara. In Mummy on the Orient Express, the 12th Doctor and Clara arrive on a futuristic version of the classic train, only to find that a strange monster called the Foretold is stalking the passengers. And if you think that's scary, you should see the state of the toilets. That's where the real monsters lie. This episode was written by Jamie Matheson, who would go on to pen 3 more scripts for the show. On his blog, Matheson revealed a number of abandoned story elements for Mummy on the Orient Express, including one concerning the fate of Clara. Originally, Clara was supposed to have seen the Foretold and would try to hide from it inside its sarcophagus. Unfortunately for her, this wasn't a great move, as the sarcophagus would then be revealed as a Foretold-making machine, before wrapping her in bandages and presumably transforming her into one of the creatures. Ooh. This idea was nixed in favour of simplifying the narrative, but it certainly would have been interesting to see how the Doctor got himself out of that one, and how long it would take to unravel her. Number 9. Sarah Jane feels the heat. Elizabeth Sladen was involved in some of the best episodes of classic Who, alongside the 3rd and 4th Doctors, before revitalising the character in modern Who and even getting her own spin-off. Sladen tragically passed away at the far too young age of 65, cutting her time in the Whoniverse short. Sarah Jane never actually died on screen though, but that doesn't mean the writers never tried. In an alternate version of Sarah Jane's final classic story called The Lost Legion, it was planned for her to be straight up killed by an alien soldier, before dying in the Doctor's arms. The serial would have ended with her body being burned on a funeral pyre as the TARDIS flies away. How dark is that? Thankfully though, this never happened. Sarah Jane suffered the far worse fate of being left in Aberdeen instead, and we got to enjoy many more years of this wonderful character played by a truly wonderful lady. Number 8. HUMANY-WUMANY Silurians. For the 5th series of Modern Who, writer and future showrunner Chris Chibnall brought back a classic monster that hadn't been seen since 1984. The Silurians are a race of lizard-like creatures that are also native to planet Earth. In the 2-parter The Hungry Earth and Cold Blood, a mining operation awakens a hibernating colony, which they are not best pleased with at all. The revamped human-like look of these Silurians was achieved with intricate prosthetics, which looked great, but were an absolute bugger to apply. It was too much work to give these prosthetics to every Silurian in the story, which is why some of them wear those grey masks with large black eyes. These masks led Chibnall to consider an almighty retcon for the Silurians, that they'd always worn masks, and that they'd always had the same humanoid faces underneath that these revamped versions do. You know, those classic Silurians with their much more alien-looking faces? Yeah, Chibnall wanted to reveal that those were actually masks. In the end, Chibnall was overruled by Stephen Moffat, who decided that these new Silurians should just be a different subspecies instead. Number 7. Doctor Deported. The Power of 3. What a weird little episode. Tiny cubes, Brian's log, Lord Sugar, delightful stuff. We also see the Doctor playing Wii tennis while waiting for those mysterious black cubes to do something. And physicist Brian Cox has a cameo as well. This episode almost featured another big guest appearance too, in the form of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. No, not Harriet Jones or Harold Saxon, a new character called Stephen Carter. Sadly, not the grandson of Captain Jack Harkness though. Carter would have been suspicious of the Doctor due to the slow invasion of the cubes. And get this, he would have outright banned the Doctor from the UK, resulting in Eleven's absence from a large portion of the episode. The Doctor really doesn't get along with Prime Ministers, do they? The final version instead had the Doctor dipping in and out of the story, and in and out of the Pond's lives via the TARDIS, which feels like a more natural way of doing things. Number 6. Zoe in Exile. Zoe was a 2nd Doctor companion who appeared in 8 stories between 1968 and 1969. An astrophysicist from the future, Zoe fought the likes of the Cybermen and the Ice Warriors before having her memory wiped by the Time Lords when they forced the Doctor to regenerate. This was the end of her regular appearances on the show, but if the writers had got their way, then we would have seen a lot more of her. Plans were in place for the War Games to end with a slightly different twist. Instead of the 2nd Doctor being exiled to Earth by himself, Zoe would have joined him, where she would have co-starred alongside Jon Pertwee as the 3rd Doctor's companion. This would have offered a chance to further explore her genius-level intellect intellect while also playing on the fact that she was a woman out of time. It would have been super interesting to see Zoe stuck on Earth for all these unit-based stories, but when Wendy Pabry decided to call it quits, Liz Shaw was created as the Third Doctor's companion instead. Number 5. Bo, no he didn't! The face of Bo was a big wrinkly face in a jar, and for some reason, everybody loved him. He appeared just 3 times in New Who, well, technically way more if you consider the fact that he is Captain Jack, but played a massive part in revealing the existence of the Master to the 10th Doctor. In his second outing, Series 2's New Earth, the face of Bo is one of the patients under threat from the diseased hordes, and this very nearly led to him succumbing to a grisly fate. In a deadly twist, he was originally supposed to die in this episode, along with every other patient in the hospital. Now, considering how integral Bo would become to the arc of Series 3 with the whole "you are not alone" thing, his premature death might have changed the show significantly. However, he was spared by an unlikely saviour in the form of Stephen Moffat, who joked that Russell T Davies always killed off interesting characters, prompting RTD to reverse course. Honestly, these writers and their egos. Number 4. Time Lords and Daleks. The End of Time Parts 1 and 2 were stories of firsts and lasts. They were the last regular episodes to feature the 10th Doctor and the first to feature the 11th. They were also the first time in New Who that we got a proper look at the Doctor's race, as the Time Lords played a big part in the narrative. Led by Timothy Dalton's Lord President and his Infinity Gauntlet, the Time Lords attempted to use the Master as a way of pulling themselves and Gallifrey out of the Time War. Good news for them, bad news for literally everybody else. To show just how far down the path of madness the Time Lords had gone, RTD originally plotted a shock reveal for this story, and was going to show that the Time Lords had entered into an alliance with their sworn enemies, the Daleks. The End of Time already has a lot going on, so just imagine if a Time Lord Dalek alliance had been involved too. This idea soon fell through, since Stephen Moffat was planning on using the Daleks in his first series as showrunner. Not wanting to immediately undermine his successor, RTD removed the famous villains from his script. What a nice guy. Number 3. Regeneration 1.0. William Hartnell helmed the ship for almost 3 years before his health issues caught up with him. It was decided that the Doctor should have the ability to cheat death by changing his face and body, thus giving birth to one of TV's greatest ever plot devices. Hartnell said goodbye in the serial The 10th Planet, essentially dying of old age. The actor's exit was almost different though. Very different indeed. Producer John Wiles, who didn't necessarily have the best working relationship with Hartnell, tried to write him off during the serial The Celestial Toymaker. His plan was to have the titular villain turn the Doctor invisible, and when this was reversed, the Doctor would reappear with a different face. Surprise! This would lead to speculation among his companions as to whether he was the Doctor or just another of the Toymaker's tricks. In the end, this proto-version of regeneration was nixed. Hartnell's contract was extended, and it was actually Wiles that changed face, with somebody else taking his place as producer. Ironic. Number 2. Buckingham Blast. Doctor Who has included the British monarchy in a number of different stories. There was that time Queen Victoria was nearly murdered by a werewolf, not to mention the Doctor's many dalliances with Queen Elizabeth I. But destroying the royals' most famous residence? That proved a step too far. The 2007 Christmas episode Voyage of the Damned ends with the 10th Doctor narrowly preventing an intergalactic version of the Titanic from smashing into Buckingham Palace. What a mad sentence that is. Even madder is the original idea for this scene, which would have seen the space Titanic full-on obliterate Buckingham Palace instead, leaving the Queen angrily shaking her fist at the ship as it flew away. For all sorts of reasons, mainly budget limitations, this was vetoed, and the building was spared a violent redecorating. Oh, and fun fact, Charles, the then Prince of Wales, now the King of England, was offered a cameo in this episode, but he turned it down. Maybe he was annoyed that he wasn't the one to snog David Tennant. Number 1. Rose and the Devil. The book The Writer's Tale offers an engrossing behind-the-scenes look at the making of New Who's early years. A collection of emails between showrunner Russell T Davies and journalist Benjamin Cook, it details rather candidly the creative process behind the show and explores some of RTD's quirks as a writer. For example, he hates dream sequences. In one section of the book, RTD calls the trope pathetically symbolic, before giving an example of one that almost turned a Series 2 story on its head. The initial cliffhanger for The Impossible Planet was for Rose to get possessed by the mysterious beast, exclaiming, "I am the beast incarnate." Davies loved this idea, but not so much what happened next. The next episode was then going to open with Rose imagining she was back home with Jackie and Mickey. Only something wasn't right. That's because it was all a dream. A twist which RTD simply couldn't bear. Rose being one of the possessed antagonists of this story would have been wild to see, but it's also understandable why RTD felt it was a bit too weird. And that concludes our list. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell so you never miss a Who Culture video ever again. Also, head over to Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok to follow us there, and I can be found on all those social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with Who Culture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.